The topic today is regarding 4-point restraints in particular, and whether or not, if and when they are used, and if you believe that it either violates a person's civil rights or is considered abuse.
Okay.
And so I'll let Alyssa go ahead and start off.
First of all, if you could give us some of your background, what your position is and how you've been doing it.
Okay. Well, at this hospital, I'm a staff nurse on this acute inpatient psychiatric unit. I've been here for only about a month, and prior to that, I actually worked in correctional settings for about 17 years, mostly in mental health and in a variety of other kind of positions, and in community mental health for 7 or 8 years before that.
Okay. Have you ever restrained a patient, and if so, why?
Yes, and I think in every instance the reason is safety.
Whose safety?
Primarily the patients, secondarily the staff and the other patients.
Okay. What were your feelings while restraining a patient?
I guess participating in a hands-on sense, it's there can be quite a bit of adrenaline, and it's so one is kind of nervous about doing that, and it's kind of patients are restrained, I think, when we reach kind of an impasse, and there really isn't any other choice procedurally at that point. The less restrictive measures have been tried. And we've tried to talk to people. We've tried to offer them medication. Tried to offer alternatives.
Well, then that kind of leads to this. Do you view restraints as necessary, or do you think there are some alternatives that could be used?
Well, I think that there are less restrictive alternatives, and in my experience, restraints are used when the less restrictive alternatives have been exhausted. And again, it's an issue of safety.
What would some of those alternatives be?
Talking, finding out what the issues are, and hopefully finding some other way of resolving them, offering timeouts.
Do you feel that the current protocol regarding restraints that they're beneficial or a hindrance to you? What are your feelings on the protocol as they exist right now at this hospital?
But at this hospital, well, as I said, I've just been here barely a month, and I came from an environment that was quite different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that the policies and procedures and the protocols are well written, well thought out, well researched, well designed, and really take into account everyone's safety and liability and those kinds of considerations.
Do you think if the protocol, even if it's used correctly, that restraints can become harmful to the patient or abusive or impact their civil rights?
I know it's been true in the past, and I think that over time there have been really a lot of efforts to correct some of those situations, and those kinds of issues are really, those issues are referred to in the policies and procedures. And patients aren't restrained simply because someone wants to, or because someone doesn't like this patient, and so restraining them seems like the thing to do. And there are documentation requirements that really speak to practice and quality of care. You know, what other less restrictive means have been tried, and have other alternatives been reasonably tried, and is it clear that those other alternatives are ineffective?
Do you see a difference between the way males versus females are treated while being restrained?
That I haven't, no.
Are you more likely to do you see oh, I guess you just answered that. You're not more likely to restrain one more often than another in any way. Do you notice a different reaction in the genders while being restrained?
I have, yeah, I have.
Can you elaborate on that?
Well, but I do have to qualify that too, because I came from I worked in a correctional environment, both juvenile and adult correctional environment, and so I think that the men tended to be more physical and more resistant and more violent, and the women tended to be less so. Not exclusively, but just kind of in a general way. And I would suppose that's due to a lot of things: background, upbringing, just the sum total of life experience.
What would you first attempt? Well, first of all, would you view restraints as a last resort or as precautionary?
More or less a last resort behaviorally.
Okay.
Because my understanding of the statutes and almost every institutional policy and procedure and almost every accrediting body's expectation is that less restrictive alternatives have been tried and exhausted, and also that restraints may be used to stabilize the situation, just to get through a crisis, and crisis by definition are temporary and short-lived, and when the crisis is over, then it's time to do something else.
Are there any drawbacks that you see to restraints and any positive sides to restraints?
Well, I think that I think that the drawbacks are pretty well documented in some of the terrible outcomes that have happened. Excuse me. People have been injured, being restrained. Patients have died in restraints, and so those are certainly not positive outcomes.
Any positive sides to restraints that you see or not?
Well, in terms of a safety issue and preventing any injury to the patient being restrained, to other patients that are nearby, and to the staff that are that are working